Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nerdy Girl Travels. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit differently. We're still talking about travel and travel experience and travel advice, travel tips, but we're approaching this from a socially conscious standpoint. So, just a little bit of background about where I'm coming from today. I've always had this topic in my list of issues to cover for this channel, and the reason why I'm jumping into it now rather than waiting till later where it kind of fits is because just so much has been going on over the past couple of weeks around this topic. For one, I just started binge watching 90 Day Fiancé the other way, which is about, if you're not familiar with the show, um, or with the concept, people who are marrying people in another country. And basically, if you're on a tourist visa, you typically have 90 days before your visa expires. And so if you're getting married, you're a 90-day fiance. But this version of the series is focusing on American citizens that are marrying foreign nationals and going to then live in those foreign countries. And so, around this topic, which really has just pushed me like, okay, girl, just talk about it now since it's hot and fresh on the table. But I've also really been watching just a lot of different YouTube videos and YouTube commentators, especially people from the diaspora that are repatriating back to the African continent, and just kind of seeing those videos and those critiques of the continent and those ideas that people are pushing forward. And by no means is this a call out podcast or anything like that. Like, I'm not going to be addressing anybody specifically or any specific names or anything like that, because quite frankly, your opinion is your opinion. But just seeing some of that stuff, it's really like, okay, we need to talk about this today. So, what we're going to be talking about today is just managing expectations when you're traveling. And this is applicable to traveling throughout the United States as well. But really, we're nailing home traveling abroad and managing those expectations. So, the first thing when we're talking about managing your expectations is recognizing that you have them, recognizing that you have biases, you have stereotypes that you believe. So that's really the first step in all of this, is to realize that we all have implicit biases and stereotypes that we categorize the world in. We have expectations when we travel different places. So, first step in managing those expectations is to realize that you have them. I know a lot of us think of ourselves as, free spirits, open minded, progressive, whatever the case, but we all have biases. We all have expectations. And so, when you're going to another country or another region, another state, whatever, I think it's really important to kind of understand what those expectations are. And are they realistic? Do they line up with reality? Do they line up with what you're going to be comfortable with confronting once you get to wherever you're going? So definitely just recognizing that and addressing that head on is probably the most important takeaway, and why it's point number one in this conversation. When you're traveling other places, it's important also not to be a colonizer. And you can be a colonizer regardless of your skin color or country of origin. Really, at the core of it, being a colonizer in this day and age as a traveler, and obviously not as a colonial power, is you're a guest in someone else's country. Therefore, or region, as I said, therefore, you should not expect to come over and be the boss. You should not expect to go somewhere and have the local people acquiesce and conform to what your standard of normal is, or your standard is, or whatever, however you'd like to phrase it. Some things that I've been seeing both on the 90 Day Fiance the other way and throughout YouTube with a lot of people who are repatriating is they go to these countries and it's like, ew, I don't like the way the house looks. I don't like the way the food tastes. I don't like the attitude that this person gave me. I don't like the way they talk to me. I'm not going to dress that way. I'm not going to wear that. I'm not going to speak that way. And it's like, you're in someone else's home. You don't get to dictate how someone else runs their home. It's the exact same thing when you're traveling to another country. They have a culture all their own. that is equally valid, equally as important, equally as unique, equally as special, equally as meaningful as the culture that you're coming from. And so it's unfair, it's immoral, it's just downright wrong to go to someone else's country acting like you know better because you're coming from wherever you're coming from. Um, and that works both ways when you're coming from the West over to the quote unquote developing world and vice versa. Your culture isn't better than someone else's, it's just different. Different does not mean better or worse. It literally means that different, not the same. And so that is something that I think we all really need to keep in mind, because even when we're coming from a place of love or we're coming from a place of wanting to help, you have to remember, you're a guest. No one asked you for your help. No one asked you for your opinion about how people live their daily lives. And when you make videos or you make comments or you complain about things and how things operate and how people are one way or the other, you're not doing anyone any favors, yourself included, because all you're going to do is alienate people. Now, a lot of people will just say, I'm just spitting facts. I'm just, giving it to you raw, uncensored, whatever. That's not the case. At the end of the day, especially as an adult, there's a thing called tact and there's a thing called delivery. No one's going to hear your message, as well meaning as you may be, if you lack tact. If you're not able to communicate in a way that people understand and feel comfortable with, and I know for some people that's a challenge because they don't want to feel like they're babying people or whatever the case. But listen, if you're used to living in a 3-story mansion in the United States and you move to rural Ecuador and you're living in a shack, guess what? You're living in a shack. If that's what the village around you looks like, then that's what it looks like. I mean, yeah, you've seen different accommodations. You might feel comfortable in different accommodations. Then you can make that happen for yourself. But you have no right to go to someone else's country and talk to them as if they're beneath you. So, like I said, managing those expectations starts with understanding your expectations and your biases and not being a colonizer. So next, it's familiarizing yourself before you get there. Take the time to understand what the laws are, what the customs are, what the norms are, what their expectations of you are, so that you're not surprised. Because it's a lot easier to plan for this type of thing than it is to have to react. And you're going to be a lot less offensive if you plan for things rather than react to things. And quite frankly, if you're in the situation, if you're repatriating, or if you are on 90 Day Fiance the other way and you're planning to move someplace permanently, it makes sense that you would figure these things out before you go. Now, obviously, 90 Day Fiance is a TV show. I'm sure that some of the drama is dialed up for dramatic effect, for viewership and what have you. The same thing with like House Hunters International. People go and just complain, and it's like, why are you even going at this point if all you're going to do is complain? And the same thing with people repatriating. I mean, obviously that is fiction over fact, but it's the same thing. Like, we understand that sometimes you're just going to show the narrative of the negatives, or just sometimes people only show the positives, and we know that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. But if you familiarize yourself on the front end, you go into these things knowing exactly what to expect and how to behave. Now, obviously, everything is not going to be written down because culture is fluid. And so if you have people in the country that you're going to visit or going to move to or going to live in or whatever the case, I have those conversations. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. You definitely should have them, because something as simple as whether or not it's legal to bring alcohol into the country, especially if you're going on vacation. Because most places, even if it's not legal to bring alcohol in, you can still get it there legally. But is it okay to bring a drone? There are some countries where you are not allowed to bring a drone for photo taking purposes or anything else. There's countries where you're not allowed to bring in religious material in excess. You can bring your personal Bible or your rosary if you're Catholic or whatever the case. But if you're going around evangelizing people, that's a no-no in some countries, regardless of what your intent is. That's just something that's against the law in certain places. Trying to convert people from one religion to the other. So you have to be mindful of things like that. Things that you probably don't even think about. It pays to know these things on the front end. Okay, so the last thing I want to say about it really is to not beat yourself up about it. And I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, feel like that is one of the bigger issues that we face globally as a people in terms of trying to unite and treat one another better, is that we're afraid to admit that we have stereotypes and that our stereotypes are wrong or are flawed or whatever the case. You know, it doesn't make you a bad person that you have an implicit bias. It makes you a bad person to know you have that bias and not address it and not correct it. Biases and stereotypes all come from a place, whether fact or fictional. They're a way for our minds to compartmentalize the things that we learn because honestly, we don't have the working brain capacity to individualize every single situation. Like, that's just a psychological fact, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's been a long time since I got my psychology degree and it's only an undergrad. But that's just one of those things. You have these things in your mind, but you have to be able and willing to face them head on. To understand that not everyone is going to have the same perspective as you. Not everyone's going to have the same worldview as you. Our individual cultures and life experiences are what shape the way we view the world and how we view what is considered normal. So when you're going other places, whether you're going from New York to Georgia or you're going from the United States to Timbuktu, there are going to be differences in the way that you see the world, the way you approach different things. You have to be able to realize and kind of grow beyond your ego, especially when you're going from one place to the next. I see the attitude differences and the way different people look at one another when they're going from one environment to the next. It's it's pretty blatant how that kind of works out, and we're all guilty of it to a certain extent. But the more you expose yourself to learning and understanding your own mind and what reality is, the better you're going to be when you get to wherever location you're going to. Alrighty, guys. So I didn't want to keep you guys long. I did just want to kind of touch on that just because I feel like it's something that's really at the forefront right now. With a lot of people kind of moving and shaking. Now, obviously, the United States, we are on punishment from this coronavirus. A lot of people don't even want us coming to their countries right now. So this will obviously be useful information for once we are able to get back out and see the world again. But definitely it's something to think about because it applies across the board, not even just with travel. It applies with any time you're interacting with people who are from a different background than you. Make sure that you understand that we are all unique in our own way, and that just because someone thinks and acts differently from you does not make it wrong. Well, all right, folks, I appreciate you guys tuning in today. I definitely look forward to the next time we're able to get together and share this little time together. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you are one of my patrons on Patreon, you will be getting access to this podcast earlier than all of my other social media platforms. Again, I continue to appreciate you guys for your continued support, regardless of you're on Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, or wherever you are accessing this podcast from. I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe, and I will catch you on the next one. Hello, hello.